What's the scariest thing that can happen during a night shift? After hearing these 3 true stories, you'll never look at overnight work the same way again. Story 1: The Final Goodbye. Working the night shift in healthcare means witnessing life's most profound moments. But sometimes, those moments don't end when you think they do. A healthcare worker was assigned to the overnight shift with 2 colleagues at a care facility. One of their clients, an elderly woman, was in her final hours. The worker sat with her through the night, providing comfort in those last precious moments. Then, quietly and peacefully, the woman took her final breath. The other staff members were too frightened to enter the room. Death was new to them, and they couldn't bring themselves to witness what their colleague had just experienced. So the worker checked for a pulse, called the doctor, and waited for the death to be certified. It was 2 a.m. The facility was silent. All the other residents were asleep, and the lights in the common areas had been turned off hours ago. That's when they heard it. The woman's call buzzer started beeping. Not in her room where she had just passed away, but in the lounge where she used to sit during the day. The red light blinked frantically in the empty, darkened room. No one was there. No one could have pressed it. The other workers started screaming. They'd never seen anything like this before. But the healthcare worker, they understood. "She's visiting her favorite place one last time," they said calmly. "She's saying goodbye." The worker walked over to the buzzer and switched it off. Immediately, the beeping stopped. The red light went dark, and a sense of peace settled over the entire facility. Story 2: The Music Producer. If you've ever worked in food service, you know the late-night crowd can be unpredictable. But nothing could have prepared this worker for what walked through the doors that night. It was the graveyard shift at a 24-hour restaurant. Just the crew chief and 1 cook, handling whatever came through the doors after midnight. Around 2 a.m., a man walked in. Well-dressed, articulate, friendly. He struck up a conversation with the crew chief, talking about his work as a music producer in Los Angeles. The crew chief was genuinely interested. The man was polite, engaging, almost charming. But then, other customers started arriving. As the crew chief moved around the restaurant taking orders and serving food, something began to change. The music producer started talking to himself. At first, it was just quiet mumbling, but then the laughter started. Low chuckling at first, then louder, then maniacal. The crew chief looked over and saw the man's face, completely transformed. His expressions were shifting rapidly, disturbingly. His voice changed pitches as he ranted about the world. Other customers started looking uncomfortable. 2 of them simply got up and left. They were scared. The crew chief had no choice but to call the police. When the officers arrived, something incredible happened. The man's entire demeanor instantly returned to normal. He was polite, articulate, charming again. He walked out peacefully with the police officers, but just before he reached the door, he turned back, looked directly at the crew chief, and winked. Story 3: The Phantom Elevator. Our final story takes place in a recording studio in New York City, the kind of place where expensive equipment and late-night creativity sometimes attract more than just musicians. An intern was working the overnight maintenance shift with 1 other person. The building was supposed to be completely empty except for them. It was 3:30 in the morning when they heard it. The elevator was running. They looked at the security cameras. No one at the front entrance, no one in the lobby, no one in the elevator itself. But somehow, it was moving. Then they heard the ding. The elevator had stopped at their floor. Both workers froze. They were about 15 feet away from the elevator doors. The doors opened. Nobody was there, but here's what made their blood run cold. Elevator doors are programmed to close after a few seconds. These doors stayed open for 20-30 seconds. They stood completely motionless, afraid to breathe, watching those open doors. Finally, the doors closed. The next day, they asked other workers about it. One of them said the exact same thing had happened to him when he was alone in the building. Maybe there's a logical explanation. Elevator malfunction, sensor error, but in a building filled with expensive equipment and creative energy, who knows what else might be drawn to those late-night hours?